He didn't have to open his eyes to know he was awake. His thoughts and movements were stiff, while the pain and unease of his life resumed. He treasured the listless motionlessness that enveloped his body when he dreamt about her. The two of them intertwined in a suspended sense of love and unity. There, he was home, far removed from the pain. He imagined that to those who watched him sleep, he did so with a smile, or an air of contentment written across his face. But today, like every other day for the past 3 months, he had to wake up and face reality. Dreaming was a fleeting moment of pleasure in an otherwise listless existence. Waking up was always a struggle, as he fought to stay there with her. But something from the outside world always invaded their serenity and triggered her departure into the distance. Today it was the splattering nonsense of the nearby Australians. He'd always disliked Australians. Although his brother and sister had each spent a year traveling down under and loved it, he'd never really bought into all that "g'day mate" bullshit. To him, Aussies were brash, overconfident people with little understanding of the wider world. 4 long hours on a ferry did little to alter that opinion. Eyes still closed, the Australians' squealing excitement heralded their arrival at their destination. He finally opened his eyes and slowly sat up. As his green eyes adjusted to the intense midday light, the longing of his dream remained. He rose quickly and picked up his backpack, moving purposefully down the steps and off the vessel. He slid past the Australians, not before muttering, "convict fucks," much to his own amusement. The air felt warm within the slight breeze that carried the local aroma. The mixed scent of hot air, the spoils of the nearby fishing boats, and the spice stalls dotted along the dock met his inquisitive nose. He loved the smells that the new city brought. Dublin, Saint-Tropez, Toronto, Cairo, and now Dar es Salaam, possessing fragrances as unique as the people and cultures that inhabited them. Each one was firmly tattooed on his senses, where a wealth of memories resided. Dublin had been his home for almost his entire life. Its youthful vibe was an intoxicating scent that even today had never been bettered. Whilst living in Toronto, he told his friends there that he could never have imagined growing up in any other city. 1980s Dublin, though in the midst of a strangling recession, was alive with young, resourceful people who, despite the odds, purposely set against them and broken free of the Catholic Church's quest to control its children spiritually, artistically, obediently, and sexually from the pulpit. U2, Sinead O'Connor, and the Commitments were trailblazers for the new Ireland, an Ireland where it was fuck the parish priest, fuck the church, and fuck what you think of us. Let us live how we want. Having been born in 1980, he'd not been at the forefront of this movement by any stretch of the imagination. Rather, he'd been fortunate to reap the reward of those who'd revolted before him. The posters on his brothers' and sisters' bedrooms were a testament to the new Ireland, the Ireland he loved. As he surveyed the landscape before him, he noticed a neat row of coffee shops and tourist traps. To the best of his knowledge, he'd not eaten today, and the thought of eating appealed to him. Once, food had been an important part of his life. He had loved food, appreciated taste, and loved to eat. His parents had owned one of Dublin's finest bistros for almost 20 years, and everyone assumed that he'd eventually take it over. He had too. That was until his life changed forever in Saint-Tropez. Like many of the children of Dublin's well-to-do society, he'd savored the south of France on more than one occasion. Although his parents were not that wealthy, they had provided well for their 3 children on Dublin's south side. The annual family holiday in late August had been a welcome and educational experience for him. Normandy, Nice, and later Saint-Tropez were childhood memories that even today, despite a troubled mind and a life now void of happiness, made him smile upon reflection. Saint-Tropez, though, was bittersweet. It was there he met her, Sarah. The pleasant-looking loon behind the counter spoke better English than he'd imagined. He wondered to himself if English was what the locals actually spoke. He cringed at his ignorance. He should have known that, he cursed himself. He used to be so knowledgeable about other races and cultures. He used to be attentive. He used to be a lot of things. He loved living in Toronto. Neighborhoods like Chinatown, Little Italy, Little Portugal, and Kensington ran into each other without borders or comment. Melting pot was an ugly and unobserved term in Toronto. Diversity was cherished, and he for one celebrated it. Sarah did too. They had looked forward to welcoming their daughter to a city without borders or prejudices. He shuddered as the lady serving him gently touched his hand and repeated, "That's $5, please, sir." He looked up, smiled weakly, and paid her. He took the cold Heineken bottle and the ham roll and sat at the table outside. The beer tasted better than he'd expected. He hadn't given much thought to what he was drinking, but his taste buds welcomed it. The sandwich had some merit, but one bite was all he could stomach. His parents were shocked when he told them he was moving to Toronto. So much so that his brother and sister were dispatched for a family conference. "I don't know what's more surprising, the fact that you're leaving Dublin, or that you're doing so for a girl," his sister Valerie exclaimed with a warm smile. His brother Mark looked equally surprised. "Are you sure this is for real?" Mark asked. "I mean, you're 26, and have never had a serious girlfriend before. Now you're emigrating to live with the first girl you've spent more than a full night with." Mark had a point. Killian had enjoyed a certain joie de vivre. He was the last of his friends to settle down, and along the way had broken a heart or two. On more than one occasion, his sister's husband, Paul, had joked that Killian was his idol, while his sister-in-law had long given up on introducing him to her cousins, work colleague, and, of course, her sister. Tom, their uncharacteristically quiet father, looked at his youngest son and nodded slowly and purposefully. Nobody knew his son like Tom, and he knew that despite his light-hearted conference, his son was indeed very serious about leaving home and beginning a new life in Canada with Sarah. "I'm just looking forward to meeting her," Tom said, as he refreshed the emptying wine glasses on the wooden kitchen table. He nodded at the waiter as he collected the empty green bottle, and a fresh beer was immediately dispatched for. Beside him, a happy Spanish-speaking couple laughed as they perused the photos on the digital camera. He used to laugh a lot. They used to laugh a lot. Sarah always told him that she'd never met anyone who enjoyed laughing as much as he had. During his late teens, his father scolded him on more than one occasion to stop laughing and take life seriously. This, of course, only fueled his laughter even more. He didn't laugh anymore. What was there to laugh at? He remembered the last time he'd ever laughed. He wondered if other people could remember that too. Or did they take it for granted, as they knew another reason to laugh was just around the corner? His reason to remember was easy. It was the last time he'd ever seen his wife alive. The second beer tasted better than the first. Instead of savoring it, like he had the first, he took large mouthfuls. Whereas he'd savored the first for refreshment and enjoyment, he was now drinking to repress. With every breath he took, his mind countered with memory after memory, scenario after scenario. It was a cruel onslaught. "Our daughter is definitely Daddy's little girl," laughed a panting Sarah mid-labor. "In fact, if she was any relation of mine, she'd have been born exactly on time." Killian laughed. He was infamous for his timekeeping, or lack thereof, while Sarah's punctuality was one of her many Marthisms, as he liked to call them. "Well, if she is mine, then she'd know that Liverpool are kicking off at an hour, and she'd hurry her little arse up," he feigned grumpily as the nurses rolled Sarah's gurney out the door. "See you soon, Mommy," he smiled as he eased into a welcoming chair. And that was it. The last time. A prenatal DVD is one thing, but a live cesarean is a fucking other, Killian said, turning to James, his childhood best friend of 20 years, who'd flown over for the birth. James had initially planned on staying only for a few days, but baby Malloy's Killian-like disregard for good timekeeping had delayed his departure. "Ah, you big baby. Sure it's like pulling a tooth," scolded James. "Like pulling a tooth," he murmured, shaking his head mournfully. "Sir, another drink?" asked the attentive waiter. "Please," he said, draining the remnants of his fourth bottle. "My pleasure. Are you here on holiday?" the smiling waiter inquired. "I'm here to die," replied Killian, as the faraway golden sun crept slowly behind the blue Indian Ocean.